What if the most dangerous person you'll ever love isn't the one who openly hurts you, but the one who makes you feel more understood than anyone ever has? Imagine meeting someone who seems to know exactly what to say, exactly when to say it, and exactly how to make you feel like you've finally found the person you've been searching for your entire life. Every conversation feels effortless. Every moment feels meaningful. It doesn't feel like luck. It feels like destiny. Most people believe they could easily recognize a narcissist. They picture someone who constantly demands attention, dominates every conversation, and proudly places themselves above everyone else. But reality is rarely that obvious. Some narcissistic personalities never appear arrogant in the beginning. They don't intimidate you. They don't insult you. They don't try to control you right away. Instead, they earn your trust so naturally that by the time you notice something isn't right, you've already become emotionally attached. That's what makes emotional manipulation so dangerous. It doesn't begin with fear. It begins with comfort. She remembers the smallest details about your life. She asks thoughtful questions and actually listens to your answers. She makes you feel interesting, valued, and deeply understood. Every compliment feels genuine. Every message brightens your day. For the first time in a long time, you stop wondering whether someone could truly love you. You begin believing you've finally found the right person. But sometimes what feels like genuine understanding is actually careful observation. While you're learning to trust her, she may be quietly learning everything about you, your fears, your insecurities, your childhood experiences, the dreams you haven't told anyone else, the emotional wounds you still carry. None of those conversations feel dangerous because they happen naturally. In fact, they make you feel even closer to her. In healthy relationships, that's exactly what emotional intimacy looks like. Two people slowly learn about each other because they genuinely care. They use that knowledge to build trust, offer support, and create emotional safety. But in a manipulative relationship, the same information can become something very different. Instead of helping you feel safe, it can slowly become the foundation for influence, control, and emotional dependency. The frightening part is that almost nobody notices it while it's happening. Manipulation rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with obvious warning signs. It hides behind kindness, affection, and attention. That's why so many intelligent people don't realize they're being manipulated until they look back months or even years later and wonder how they became someone they no longer recognize. Today, we'll explore 7 hidden signs of a female narcissist that many men overlook. None of these signs alone prove that someone is a narcissist, because human behavior is always more complex than a simple label. But when these patterns appear consistently and slowly begin changing the way you think, feel, and see yourself, they deserve your attention. Because sometimes the greatest red flags don't look dangerous at all until it's already too late. The first sign is so convincing that most people mistake it for compatibility. In fact, it often feels like the kind of connection people spend years searching for. You mention your favorite book, and she lights up, saying it's one of hers too. You talk about your future goals, and somehow her vision for life sounds almost identical. Your hobbies become her hobbies. Your values become her values. The more you learn about her, the more it feels like you've found someone who was almost designed specifically for you. At first, it feels impossible not to fall in love. Every conversation seems effortless because there's almost no disagreement. You rarely feel misunderstood. Instead, you feel seen in a way you've never experienced before. Friends notice the chemistry between you. They tell you how lucky you are to have found someone who understands you so completely. Even you begin believing that meeting her was simply too perfect to be a coincidence. But here's the question very few people stop to ask. How can someone you've only known for a short time seem to match your personality almost perfectly? Real compatibility grows over time. It develops through honesty, shared experiences, disagreements, compromise, and mutual respect. No two healthy people are identical. They naturally have different opinions, different habits, and different ways of seeing the world. Those differences don't weaken the relationship, they make it real. A manipulative narcissist understands something most people never think about. People trust those who remind them of themselves. So instead of showing you who she really is, she carefully studies who you are first. She pays attention to the stories you tell, the qualities you admire, the dreams you chase, and the type of partner you've always wanted. Then, almost without you noticing, she reflects those same qualities back to you. It feels like love, but sometimes it's something much more calculated. Psychologists refer to this behavior as mirroring. By itself, mirroring isn't always unhealthy. We all naturally copy small parts of another person's body language, tone of voice, or expressions during conversation because it helps create connection. The difference lies in the intention. Healthy mirroring creates comfort while remaining genuine. Manipulative mirroring creates attachment by hiding the person's true identity behind the image they believe you'll fall in love with.
I found this amazing vintage lens.
Eventually, small cracks begin to appear. The interests she once shared so passionately don't seem important anymore. The opinions that always matched yours suddenly begin changing. You start noticing inconsistencies that weren't there before. At first you ignore them because you're still holding on to the incredible connection you felt in the beginning. You tell yourself everyone changes. You convince yourself you're simply overthinking. But this is exactly where the emotional trap begins to close. Because once you've fallen in love with the version of her that was carefully created for you, you'll do almost anything to experience that feeling again. Instead of questioning the relationship, you begin chasing the memory of how perfect it once seemed. And that's precisely when the next stage of manipulation quietly begins. Instead of listening, she immediately changes the story. She tells you that the conversation never happened the way you remember it. She insists you're being too sensitive. She says you're imagining problems that don't exist. Sometimes she even laughs, as if your concerns are completely unreasonable. The discussion quickly shifts away from her behavior and becomes focused on your reaction instead. At first you trust your own memory. You know what happened because you were there. But after hearing the same response over and over again, something begins to change. You stop asking whether her behavior was wrong. Instead, you begin asking whether your memory is wrong. You replay conversations in your head late at night, searching for details you might have missed. The confidence you once had in your own judgment slowly begins to disappear. Psychologists call this gaslighting. Despite how often the word is used online, true gaslighting is more than simply lying. It's a repeated pattern of making someone doubt their own perception of reality. Healthy partners may disagree with your interpretation of an event, but they don't repeatedly make you question your memory, your emotions, or your ability to understand what's happening around you. The real damage isn't caused by a single conversation. It's caused by repetition. Every time your feelings are dismissed, every time your memories are questioned, and every time your concerns are turned back against you, your confidence weakens a little more. Eventually, trusting yourself becomes harder than trusting the person manipulating you. That's when emotional control becomes incredibly powerful, because a person who no longer trusts their own mind becomes much easier to influence. And once that self-doubt takes hold, the relationship enters its most addictive stage. You begin chasing the moments when everything feels normal again, hoping the loving person you met at the beginning will suddenly return. But those moments don't come consistently anymore. They come just often enough to keep you holding on. This is the stage where many people become trapped without even realizing it. One day, she treats you like you're the most important person in her world. She sends thoughtful messages throughout the day, gives you her full attention, and makes you feel deeply appreciated. The relationship feels exactly like it did in the beginning. You breathe a sigh of relief, believing the difficult days are finally behind you. You tell yourself everything is getting better. Then, without warning, everything changes again. Her replies become shorter. She suddenly seems distant. The affection disappears for no clear reason. She takes hours, or even days, to respond to messages that once received an immediate reply. When you ask if something is wrong, she calmly tells you that everything is fine, but her actions tell a completely different story, leaving you confused and emotionally unsettled. Naturally, you begin searching for answers. You replay your recent conversations over and over, wondering if you said something wrong. Maybe you weren't attentive enough. Maybe you sounded impatient. Maybe you accidentally upset her without realizing it. Instead of questioning her unpredictable behavior, you start blaming yourself. The more distant she becomes, the harder you work to bring back the loving version of her that you miss so much.
This is nice.
This emotional pattern isn't random. It's built on a psychological principle known as intermittent reinforcement. It's the same reason people continue pulling the lever on a slot machine. The reward doesn't come every time, but it comes just often enough to keep hope alive. Because you never know when the next moment of affection will arrive, you keep investing more time, more energy, and more emotion into the relationship. Healthy love doesn't keep you guessing, it creates consistency. You don't spend every day wondering where you stand or whether you've done something wrong. Emotional safety comes from knowing that disagreements won't suddenly make love disappear. Manipulation works differently. It creates uncertainty because uncertainty makes people easier to control. When affection becomes unpredictable, your focus shifts away from your own needs and toward earning back someone else's approval. Over time, you stop making decisions based on what makes you happy. Instead, you begin making decisions based on what might improve her mood. Your emotional well-being becomes completely connected to hers. If she's happy, you feel relieved. If she's distant, you feel anxious. Without realizing it, you've slowly handed someone else control over your emotional state. And once that happens, setting even the smallest boundary begins to feel almost impossible. The next sign doesn't rely on anger or punishment. Instead, it uses something much quieter and often much more effective. It uses guilt. At first, the guilt is almost invisible. It doesn't come through shouting or obvious demands. Instead, it appears in small moments that seem completely harmless. You tell her you're going to spend the weekend with your friends, and she quietly says, "That's okay," but her entire attitude changes. She becomes distant, unusually quiet, or emotionally withdrawn. Suddenly, what should have been a normal decision feels like you've done something wrong. The next day, she reminds you of everything she's done for you. She talks about the sacrifices she's made, the time she's invested, and how much she cares about the relationship. She never directly says you should feel guilty. She doesn't have to. The conversation is carefully shaped so that you reach that conclusion on your own. Before long, you find yourself apologizing for decisions that never needed an apology in the first place. This is how emotional guilt slowly becomes a form of control. In healthy relationships, boundaries are respected because both people understand that love and independence can exist together. Spending time with friends, focusing on your career, or simply needing time alone isn't seen as rejection. It's seen as a normal part of being a healthy individual. A manipulative partner often views those same boundaries very differently. Every act of independence feels like losing control. After enough of these experiences, something begins to change inside you. You stop making choices based on what you truly want. Instead, every decision passes through a different question. How will she react? You cancel plans before she even asks. You avoid conversations that might upset her. You slowly begin organizing your entire life around preventing conflict instead of pursuing happiness. It feels like you're protecting the relationship, but in reality, you're slowly abandoning yourself. The most dangerous part is that this change happens so gradually, you barely notice it. No one wakes up one morning and decides to give away their freedom. It happens through dozens of tiny compromises that seem insignificant on their own. One cancelled dinner, one missed opportunity, one friendship that slowly fades away. Months later, your life looks completely different, and you can't remember exactly when everything changed. And once guilt becomes your normal way of making decisions, the manipulation reaches its final stage. It no longer needs to control your actions directly, because you've already learned to control yourself. That's when your confidence begins to disappear, and eventually, even your own identity starts to fade. By this point, the relationship no longer feels the way it once did. The excitement that brought you together has been replaced by constant emotional tension. You spend more time trying to avoid problems than enjoying each other's company. Without realizing it, you've become someone who's always careful, always thinking before speaking, always wondering whether the next conversation will turn into another misunderstanding. At first, the changes are almost impossible to notice. You stop wearing certain clothes because she once criticized them. You stop talking to certain friends because it always creates tension. You stop sharing your biggest dreams because they somehow end up being dismissed or ignored. None of these decisions seem life-changing on their own, but together, they slowly reshape the person you are. The confident man who once spoke freely now hesitates before expressing an opinion. The ambitious man who chased new opportunities begins settling for less because keeping the relationship peaceful feels more important than pursuing his own goals. The hobbies that once brought him happiness slowly disappear. The laughter becomes less frequent. The excitement fades. Day by day, his world grows smaller without him even realizing it. This is one of the most heartbreaking effects of long-term emotional manipulation. It doesn't simply damage your confidence, it changes your identity. You become so focused on keeping another person happy that you forget what happiness even looks like for yourself. The relationship slowly becomes the center of your world, while your own needs, dreams, and personality quietly move further into the background. Eventually, you reach a painful moment of realization. You look back at the person you used to be and wonder where that version of yourself disappeared. The confidence is gone. The peace is gone. Even the simple ability to trust your own decisions feels unfamiliar. And instead of blaming the unhealthy dynamic, you've been conditioned to believe that you're the problem, that you're too emotional, too difficult, too sensitive, too demanding. That's the ultimate goal of manipulation, not simply controlling your behavior, but controlling the story you tell yourself. Because once you truly believe that every problem is your fault, the manipulator no longer has to convince you of anything. You'll do it for them. And that's why so many people stay in emotionally unhealthy relationships far longer than they ever imagined they would. But here's the truth that manipulation tries so hard to hide from you. Real love never asks you to become less of yourself. The right relationship won't make you feel smaller, weaker, or constantly uncertain. It will make you feel safe enough to grow, confident enough to speak honestly, and free enough to be exactly who you are. The moment you begin feeling like you're losing your identity to keep someone else happy, that's the moment you need to stop and ask yourself one question. Am I fighting for this relationship, or am I slowly fighting against myself? Healthy relationships aren't perfect. Every couple argues. Every relationship goes through difficult seasons. There will always be misunderstandings, mistakes, and moments when both people need patience and forgiveness. But even during those difficult moments, healthy love leaves room for honesty, accountability, empathy, and mutual respect. You may disagree, but you never lose the freedom to be yourself. Manipulation works in the opposite direction. Instead of creating clarity, it creates confusion. Instead of building confidence, it slowly destroys it. Instead of making you feel emotionally safe, it keeps you constantly wondering where you stand. You begin questioning your own thoughts, your own feelings, and eventually your own value. That's why emotional manipulation can be so damaging. It doesn't just change the relationship, it changes the way you see yourself. If you recognized several of these patterns today, don't rush to label someone a narcissist because of a single behavior. Human personalities are complex, and everyone has flaws. What truly matters is the overall pattern. Ask yourself how the relationship consistently makes you feel. Do you feel respected? Do you feel emotionally safe? Do you feel accepted for who you are? Or do you constantly feel anxious, guilty, confused, and emotionally exhausted? The answers to those questions often reveal far more than any label ever could. Always remember this: the right person will never ask you to lose yourself just to keep them. They won't punish you for having boundaries. They won't make you feel guilty for growing. They won't compete with your success or make you question your reality. Instead, They'll encourage your dreams, respect your independence, and stand beside you as you become the best version of yourself. That's what healthy love looks like. Real love brings clarity. Manipulation creates confusion. Real love brings peace. Manipulation creates anxiety. Real love helps you grow. Manipulation slowly convinces you to disappear. The moment you notice you're becoming someone you no longer recognize, don't ignore that feeling. Sometimes protecting your peace is the strongest decision you'll ever make. If this video helped you see these patterns more clearly, consider subscribing for more psychology-based insights designed to help you build healthier relationships, stronger boundaries, and greater emotional awareness. Thank you for watching. Protect your peace, trust your instincts, and never lose yourself trying to keep someone else.